Hello everybody and welcome to today's REDI information session. We'll be kicking off in a minute or so. So now is the final call for you to go and get your cup of tea or coffee and get settled in for the day. So stay tuned and we'll be opening the webinar shortly. Thank you. Well, hello everybody and welcome to today's REDI information session on the fellowship program. I'll now hand over to Jared Belcher, the director of the REDI program. Thanks Jared, over to you.
Thanks Libby, and firstly welcome everyone to find out about the exciting REDI Fellowships in this webinar today. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all meet today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples joining us today. So thanks for joining, and firstly some housekeeping. Today, please enter your questions in the Q&A box. You can submit anonymously. If you have the same question as someone else, click the upvote, which takes it to the top of the questions list. With today, we're giving an overview of the REDI Fellowship application process. So please keep your questions until the end, and then I'll let you know when we're at the end, and then you can submit them all then, and we will get through all questions today. Also, please note that the webinar today is being recorded and you can view it as a video on demand at mtpconnect.org.au webinars or on the REDI Fellowships page. So I'd like to get to know a little bit about who's joining us today. So we have two polls. The first poll is where you're joining us from today, whether that be wherever in Australia or even internationally. And second question describes why you're here today. Are you a sponsor looking to find out more about this fantastic program, an employer, an interested fellow, so a researcher, clinician, MTP professional, or none of the above? That just helps us tailor today's presentation and make sure we hit on the key points for our audience. So if you could please give you another 10-15 seconds to fill in these two questions, and then we can check the answers whenever we're ready, please, Libby.
Beautiful. They are coming through thick and fast. So I think we've got a couple more that are in the process of completing. So just give that another 5 seconds. Okay. All right. I'm going to close it here. So final calls. Okay, and I'll just pop those up on the screen for you to share those results.
Okay. Great. So we've got most parts of Australia covered except for the Northern Territory. So really good. Thanks for that. Large number from New South, so it's really going based on population sizes in the different states. And if you can scroll down, oh, I think I can do that.
Certainly can.
And okay, 59% fellows and 20% the industry sponsors, 9% the employers and 12% others. So just must be interested in this fantastic program, what we're doing. So that's great to know. Okay, I forgot to mention I have Libby Pearce and Michelle Lowe helping today, so they may jump in and you may hear their beautiful voices at some stage. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Rebecca Tunstall, who's the Senior Director of Stakeholder Engagement at MTPConnect and also the co-chair of the REDI Steering Committee. So Rebecca leads the stakeholder engagement team for MTPConnect, who are based all around Australia and are a large interface with industry. Rebecca has 13 years experience working at GSK prior to this in medical affairs and clinical, and a number of leadership positions there. So over to you, Beck.
Thanks, Jared, and welcome everyone online to this information session. It's great to see so much interest in what is an exciting opportunity to not only enhance the industry and academia collaborations and accelerate innovation, but for companies to gain from having the brightest minds come and work within their teams, and for fellows to be challenged in new and exciting ways through being embedded within industry. So MTPConnect is an independent not-for-profit growth centre established in 2015 through the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources to really drive the rate of growth of Australia's medical technologies, biotechnologies, pharmaceutical sector, and we include digital health in that as well. So on this screen, you see a lot of participants involved in the value chain across the sector, and we interact with all participants in the sector to increase collaboration and commercialisation, to improve access to global supply chains and international markets, and optimise the regulatory environment. And of course, as the topic of today, a key outcome that we are driving is to improve management and workforce skills. So a bright and strong future of the MTP sector is dependent on our workforce having the right skills, and this is what we're talking today about with the REDI Fellowship Program. So in May this year, MTPConnect was awarded the $32 million 4-year REDI initiative, Research, Exchange and Development within Industry, which is funded through the MRFF. So through this, we are working to deliver a program that systematically addresses the gaps in skills across the MTP sector and ensures that Australia has an industry-ready workforce. So REDI is a 3-pillar program, and this particular fellowship program fits within Pillar 3, industry placements and fellowships. And Jared will go into the details of the REDI program, so I won't go over that now. I was just going to reflect on a few of the intents and aims of the program, and this is by no means exhaustive, and I'm sure that we could talk about this at length in terms of what the aims and benefits are of the program. Thanks, Libby, for the next slide. Thank you for that. So the REDI Fellowship Program is set to foster greater collaboration between research and industry through fellows spending time embedded within industry, and that's the term we use for the sponsor company. So really cementing that relationship between the fellow and sponsor will benefit the ongoing relationship between the fellow and the sponsor, but also have further benefits for when the fellow goes back to their ongoing place of employment. The fellow's experience of working within industry, expanding their networks, has a multiplier effect as that filters through to their colleagues and team back within their home organisation to really grow that collaboration mindset and culture when they return. So there's certainly a ripple effect of having a fellow step out of their normal work environment, have a positive experience working within industry, sharing those newly acquired skills and networks with their teams and colleagues when they return to build further capability and increase translation of research and therefore grow the MTP sector in Australia. Now, through our recently published REDI Interim Skills Gap Analysis and the workforce survey that we conducted earlier in the year, it has been highlighted that for many skills, there's actually an experience gap. So it's not always about having the skill, but rather having people with the experience of applying that particular skill towards a commercial outcome as well. So experience can only be gained from being embedded within an environment, and this program is working to facilitate that, and particularly in relation to those entrepreneurial and commercialisation skills. So it goes a step further as the fellows go back and take those learnings to their current place of employment, to really embed that commercial and entrepreneurial experience in the academic environment. And that will hopefully drive further success in the MTP sector. Now, another thing is that the fellowships will grow and expand the fellows' skill set. So not just enhancing the technical expertise and deep knowledge that the fellows already have by working within an industry setting, but it's also through working on a project within industry. It will provide other business skills in addition to the technical skills that they already have. So being embedded and gaining experience on how a commercially focused organisation manages projects may require inputs from varied team members and different departments and functions in decision making, and how all that information is put together. Actually experiencing what is required to progress projects in that environment, seeing what types of decisions are made, how go and no-go decisions are made and who's involved in those decisions, as well as managing timelines and assessing risk and managing risk and the project management skills as well. I think the other aspect is the experience of seeing what tools are used and systems and processes which are in place to drive projects forward, and what standards are applied and adhered to in that setting. So all of these other enterprise or business skills are being added to the fellows' toolkit. So when the fellow returns, they have a new lens and perspective to their work and skills to apply with their teams and colleagues as well in that setting. So the fellow also will bring to the sponsor their innovative, bright and new ways of thinking and fresh eyes and technical expertise to the sponsor organisation. So marrying that with the sponsor colleagues' expertise, it will certainly lead to sustained relationships by working together on a project, and it's expected that that relationship is continued beyond the duration of the placement. And as mentioned earlier, it'll have the wider benefit for both the sponsor and fellows moving forward beyond that time as well. Now, in a pre-COVID world, the program would have ideally suited to having fellows easily travelling overseas, and of course that is what we're hoping to get back to soon enough with the program, and international placements are in scope of the program. But however, in the meantime, in a COVID-safe world with the current travel restrictions, it would be great to see creativity in applications where it's appropriate, where there is the opportunity to see how fellows could gain the international experience if they're still sitting within the Australian setting. So we all know that collaborations quite often require working across time zones, and we're certainly all used to working remotely now. But there may be opportunities for some companies or some sponsors that may have a global reach, or they may be global organisations where some functional roles only sit overseas, may only be based in certain head offices or particular locations. And even in the Australian setting, you may have that particular functions are located throughout different cities as well. In these instances, it would be great to see if there's a way where the fellow could be involved in projects that may take advantage of these global colleagues and these different functions. So they actually get experience and actually get exposure to that expertise as well, even if teams are sitting in different locations. So have a think about that as well in terms of how the experience of the fellow could be enhanced, even while they might be sitting within Australia, and who else in the company would be able to support and provide that experience for the fellow. And of course, the same can be applied to Australian companies with a national footprint, ensuring that the fellow has the best possible experience through engaging with different people within the business. So look, there's just a few comments, and so with that I'll leave it for Jared to take you through the actual particulars of the program, and good luck. Thank you.
Thanks for that great overview, Beck, and lots of insights into the development of the program and hopefully some great ideas that gives people something to think about.
Thanks, Jared. We'll just, excuse me, just get you to change those display settings. Thank you. Excellent.
Okay, great.
Beautiful, that's great, thanks.
Thank you. So the agenda for today, a quick overview on REDI, and then we'll move into what everyone's here about today, which is finding out more about the fellowship program, the application process. And then we should have around about 30 minutes for questions and answers at the end of the session today. And we hope to get through all the questions that everyone has. So make the most of your time here today. So REDI, as Beck said, is sponsored by or supported through the MRFF, and it's a 4-year project. It's the Research for Exchange and Development Within Industry initiative. It's been running since June this year, and you may have seen it. So Pillar 1 is about the expansion of proven programs. We've partnered with a number of proven programs around Australia to increase participation and also expand their reach. Pillar 2, we've completed the interim skills gap report, and from that we will be supporting new programs. So there'll be a lot more REDI supported programs offered next year. So please take advantage of these. And thirdly is the industry placements, internships and fellowships, and that's what we're focused on today. So for Pillar 3, we're really looking to drive collaboration between academia, industry, research, clinical, entrepreneurship, drive these connections through short, medium and long-term fellowships and internships. And this is for PhD students, for researchers, clinicians, MTP professionals. And these internships, industry placements, fellowships specifically focus on discovery, translation and commercialisation. Currently, REDI supports 4 programs. The first 2, the Bridge and Bridge Tech programs, we support the alumni and participants in these programs in short term, so 3 to 6 week industry placements. The third is we're supporting PhD students in medium-term internships, and these are 3 to 6 months of PhD students based in industry. And today we're launching the REDI Fellowship Program, which are long-term industry fellowships of around a year in duration. So Beck has given a really good overview on the intent of the program, but the statistic that keeps coming up and part of the development of this program really rings true in what we're trying to do. And it's that Australia, we rank near the top for OECD for research excellence, but we're less effective at collaboration between industry and researchers and derive the economic benefits of our research. And so that's what REDI, the fellowships are here to impact on. Also for clarity today, and to stop me getting tongue-tied, when I refer to academia today, I mean all public research in universities, hospitals, medical research institutes, and I include technology transfer offices, but it's going to make it a lot shorter if I could just use the term academia, and that's what I mean by academia today. So please forgive me for not using it exactly correctly. So the REDI fellowships require an eligible sponsor, and we'll go through what an eligible sponsor is, an eligible fellow, and a supportive employer that's supportive that the fellow is embedded in industry for a year and keeps open their position to return to that position after the fellowship. The REDI fellowships are unique. As with the REDI fellowships, we've set them up, and you'll see from the guidelines, they're based on market pull. The sponsors really drive the application process rather than the fellows. We're not intending on having fellows send us CVs and matchmaking. We expect that the sponsor, the fellow and the employer are decided first, and they form together and then develop a defined project. We're offering the eligible fellows can be researchers, clinicians, technology transfer officers. All 3 different groups may have different focuses of their research project. We know and we understand this. For example, the technology transfer officers may be more focused with corporate or commercial projects, and that's completely fine. We want to see projects across the gamut there. With these four things, the sponsor, the fellow, the supportive employer, and the project defined, submit the application, and if successful, we will then embed the fellow in the sponsor for a period of around a year. This can be full-time or part-time, and to support this, we're funding grants up to $250,000. At the end of the year, the fellow will return to their supportive employer. So who's eligible? Firstly, the fellow. The fellow is a researcher, a clinician, another MTP professional, such as technology transfer organisation professionals, entrepreneurs, business development, commercialisation staff, administrators and executive. And these can be early career, mid-career or experienced. We've had some feedback already from the guidelines after release last week that they thought it was just for early career people. That's not the intent. We're looking at supporting workers across the whole gamut from early, mid or experienced. The fellow needs to be employed by an eligible employer, and you must have support of that employer. You must also be an Australian citizen or permanent resident, and you must work in a field that's of interest to the sponsor. Next, the employer needs to be an Australian entity, has an ABN. So this is a university, MRI, hospital, technology transfer organisation. And they need to be willing to have the fellow take up a fellowship and then also support their return at the end. And as Beck pointed out before, there's many advantages to the employer for allowing this to happen. And finally, the sponsor. So the sponsor is a research-intensive company focused on human health outcomes. This can be a medical technology company, biotechnology company, but biotechnology focusing on human health, animal health, agriculture, energy, not eligible type biotechnology companies. They must be human health related or focused. Pharmaceutical companies and digital health companies. They can be Australian companies. They can be multinational with an office in Australia. They can be completely international and not have a presence here in Australia. Obviously, this is COVID pending. And the type of sponsors that we're looking for needs to be substantial research-intensive organisations. They need to be able to support and to grow the fellow and follow international best practice outcomes. Small startups, new spin-outs, it's not the intent of this program that they would be eligible sponsors. We're looking for larger companies there. So once we award the contract, we need to contract with either the employer or the sponsor. This is done on a case-by-case basis. If it's best to contract through the sponsor, we'll contract through the sponsor. If it's best to contract through the employer, we'll contract through the employer. We're outcome focused. We want to fund the best fellowships, and we will be flexible to enable this to happen. The process for the REDI Fellowships is that once you decide you want to apply, you apply in Smarty Grants, and we'll go through that process soon. The applications are then assessed by an independent panel of academia, industry and health professionals. They will choose the successful applicants. The unsuccessful applicants, you will get feedback on your application, and if you want, you can upgrade your application and then submit in a future round. The successful applicants then undertake the fellowship working in the sponsor. This requires quarterly reporting to see how you're going and following the progress of your project. And then finally, the fellow will return to their employer, and for the following year will be required to report, just so we can check for the reintegration and the multiplication effect and the ripple effect that Beck mentioned before, and seeing the skills disseminated to your employer. So we'll now move on to the application assessment. It's broken to 4 selection criteria. The first selection criteria is the sponsor. So firstly, the sponsor needs to be an eligible sponsor, and we want to see the alignment of the sponsor's interest in the area of skills of the fellow and of the project. An existing link to the fellow will be very advantageous here, and we want to see what support mechanism and resources the sponsor supplying to support the growth of the fellow and to drive the project towards a commercial outcome. With the applications, we expect it to be very competitive, and previous success in translation and commercialisation of products and services, especially for the tech transfer officers, and have a great impact, and that these have had an impact on the Australian MTP sector, will count towards the assessment here. Selection criteria 2 is the project. We're looking for a clear project with clear goals, methodology for the project, milestone steps to be achieved during the 1 year, that these are reasonable and feasible. We're looking for a technical ability to be able to achieve these outcomes, and we're looking, and if you are able to highlight your major risks and your mitigation strategies addressing these risks, this shows to the assessment panel that you're very aware across this project and has the most chance of success. The project is worth 30%, so it's a very important component when making the assessments, and also for you to focus on when developing your applications. For selection criteria 3 is the fellow. Here we're looking and evaluating the fellow on track record, CV, whether you have patent publication records, but this is aligned with career path. And to assess this, we will use the ROPE, the Research Opportunity and Performance Evidence, in this selection criteria. The ROPE criteria enable evaluation of researchers' activities, outputs and achievements in context of their career, life opportunities and experiences, including, where relevant, significant career interruptions. And to reiterate on the point before, the REDI Fellowships are for early, mid and experienced career professionals. There is no age limit, and we're looking at where you are in your career. So we're just not looking for the longest publication record. We want to put that in context. We also want to see the areas covered by the project and your experience in these areas, and that you have an ability and a plan for reintegration back into the employer's workplace and to disseminating the new skills and knowledge that you've developed, and again, looking for this ripple effect that Beck talked about. And finally, selection criteria 4 is the value, which is also worth 30%. We're looking at the value it creates to the Australian MTP sector, and we want to see that the fellowship will accelerate towards a project towards completion and commercialisation. We're looking to increase and establish ongoing and future collaboration, so there's scope for that to happen. That the fellow will have industry relevant skills that they can bring back into the employer. And we also want to see the impact on the medtech, biotech and pharmaceutical industry here in Australia. We'd like to see commercialisation, more products, more growth here in Australia, to grow from our 68,000 jobs that we had in 2019. We want to see that grow. And in saying this, these fellowships are to nucleate and to accelerate relationships. It's not intended to be a replacement for business as usual activities. So that's what the assessors will also be looking for here. Okay, moving on to the submissions. Those submissions, we use an external grant management system called Smarty Grants, and MTPConnect has its own portal here. For the submission, it's divided into 7 parts. The first is about an overview on the REDI Fellowship Program, and the second is the general information. So here's the sponsors' details, employers' details, the fellow details, a summary of the project, and also the financial details of the fellow, so we can see how much that this fellowship grant will be for. After that, you need to respond to the 4 selection criteria, and then finally, there is an acknowledgement and authorisation, and we expect that the sponsors are the ones submitting the applications rather than the fellows, although the fellow will need to work with the sponsor in developing the submission. So Smarty Grants, being an external grant management system, has lots of help for people. That's why we use it. It's quite intuitive, but there is help forums for people if you have issues, so please use that. So when you're ready, then you need to register, or the sponsor needs to register. Click on the Fill Out Now button. Once you do that, you can then download a PDF of all the questions. You can see all the information that you require. So I recommend do this early. Download the PDF, get the information, get all the information ready into a document, and then when it comes time to submit, you come back, copy and paste it all across, because we do use a number of text boxes, and then make your submission then. Once you put it in to the text boxes, you can review it. You don't have to submit it immediately. But just a note here, the Smarty Grants has lots of help. The REDI team is ready to help as well. We're ready, willing and able. But if you're having issues 10 minutes before submission because you're 5 words over one of the text box counts, then there's not too much we can help you with at that stage. And it's going to be another 4 months before the next submission deadline. So submit early, just so we don't have any issues at the end and you miss the opportunity for another 4 months and it delays your application. So we're up to the submissions and reviews. It is an open call until 17th of October 2022, or when the program is fully committed, so whichever is first. We're following a similar process to the ARC fellowships here, in that we do have submission deadlines, but should we get lots of proposals or applications, we do reserve the right to accelerate this process. And although we have grouped the announcement dates, we expect that fellows will have different start dates, and that will be in your application. There will be a question on that. So that's the end of the formal presentation. So if you have questions, can you please start typing them into the Q&A box? And I see we've got 25 already. That's fantastic. So lots to go through. And just while the questions you're going through, remember you can use upticks. So if someone already has a question you're willing to do, instead of typing it in, uptick it, and that will move it to the top. And as you leave today, you will come up to a feedback box. Please provide us feedback. This allows us to improve our services to you and do better events next time. It only takes 30 seconds. So please, it's anonymous, it's quick, and it will really help us moving forward. So if we can now move to the questions and answers, that would be great.
Okay, yes, they are coming through thick and fast, and they are being upvoted.
Yep.
So Jared, if you'd like to take it to the top, I think we have one with from Jack Brown, which has been upvoted 19 times.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Definition of larger companies. We haven't identified a number of people to determine a larger company. What we're looking for is the intent that the fellow has the support, they are research intensive, and that they are substantial and can provide support to the fellow. They've probably got a history of getting products to market, and that's what we're focusing on here. Beck gave an overview of what's required there, but we haven't said, 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, 50 people. We've stayed away from it because lots are outsourced, different departments. And so we're just looking, we want to see the support they can give to the person, to the fellow. Okay, next question's from Brett. So about surprised to hear small companies are excluded since this represents the vast majority of Australian MTP. Please comment on what defines who is eligible. I've just covered this, fairly similar to the last question. we're looking for where fellows can go. There's industry best practice procedures there, where the fellow can go and see how they can get the cross-functional teams. So these are the things we're looking for, and that defines who is eligible. And we're looking for growth. We realise that it's a number of, there will be quite a few excluded, but we're looking at the growth of the fellow, the growth of the sector, and this is the feeling of how we're going to grow it. Okay, the next question is, are startups not eligible? When do you define a startup no longer meeting the definition of startup? Haven't necessarily gone into funding and that. We're looking at what's ability. Having a team of 3 or 4 people is not the intent of this. We want them to go into substantial organisations where there are support different departments, and that's what we'll be looking for there. In terms of when a startup, look, you're right, it is dependent on how much funding you're quickly able to attract, but we are looking for what we call substantial organisations here. Okay. How large is a large company? I've covered that. Does the fellow need to be returning to a paid position, or can they be returning to an honorary position at university? We would assume it's a paid position rather than an honorary position. We'd need compelling reasons for an honorary position, but generally we would be expecting it's a paid position, either through you have another fellowship or another grant that you're working on, or whether you have tenure, or you could be employed as I said, as a tech transfer officer going forward, or a clinician in a hospital. So I don't think honorary ones are applicable, but I will check on that and get back to the anonymous on that one. Okay. From Jason Cullen, do you need to be physically co-located with the sponsor, or can the work be performed at the employer for the sponsor, e.g. screening activities? Okay. We're all working, well, a lot of us this year have worked remotely, and so remote positions are acceptable, but we expect you to be working in the sponsor.
Sorry, Jared, I'm just going to pipe in. Sorry, you just your audio just paused for a moment. So would you just mind repeating the start of that one?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so from Jason Cullen, we have, do you need to be physically located with the sponsor, or can the work be performed at the employer for the sponsor, e.g. screening activities? 2020, we've all got used to working remotely. So we have provisions for people to work remotely. If you need to use, I'm assuming that you need to do screening activities and there is equipment that you're using at the employer, then we need to understand it. But we would like to see embedded and just focused on the project only, unless you're part-time, of course. But we are looking to see you located with the employer and working on the project. But if there is equipment you need to use, and that's at the employer, then we do understand that that's the case. Okay, Nicole Donker, are we able to split a full-time 1-year fellowship to be 0.5 FTE fellowship over 2 years? We do have part-time fellowships available. Generally, we're seeing them 6 to 12 months, but we have said in exceptional circumstances, we'll do 2 years, or look up to 24 months, 2 years. So yes, we would be able to do that, Nicole, or it may be 12 months part-time. There may be 2 years. We'd want to see the value that we're getting from the project, yes, but that's definitely, we're open to that. Okay, David Martino wants to know what the funds awarded for the fellowship used to cover. So the fellowship funds are to fund your salary plus on costs, including your salary, including superannuation on costs for the employer. If you're required to relocate, they cover relocation funds as well. So if it's an international one, we pay for your airfares. We also will pay a relocation allowance. For international, we also cover a health insurance. And so that's what the funds cover. We don't have any money for research itself. These are to cover salary and relocation costs only. Okay, another question from Jason Cullen regarding the IP. So what's the IP policy? Does the IP generated during the project stay with the sponsor? The IP issues need to be sorted out between the fellow, the employer, and the sponsor. We're funding the fellowships and we expect that they are to be worked out. Part of the reason that we may contract with the sponsor is due to IP issues, but we're also equally with the employer due to IP issues. So this needs to be worked out and covered in your application process. The next question is from Anonymous. So is there an opportunity for an Australian startup to employ a fellow under this grant, i.e. be the eligible sponsor to undertake a project with the direction from a multinational with which they are undertaking research, proof of concept work as part of the startup's accelerated development activity? We want the eligible employers are hospitals, research institutes, government entities, tech transfer organisations. So in terms of that, a startup would not be considered an eligible employer or an eligible sponsor. If the fellow's employer is a university and they're going to be based with, as you said, a multinational, and even though they may feed back to the university and the startup, then that may be something that we can consider. The next one is from Stephanie. Can the fellowship support an international researcher coming to Australia? For this program, no, it's not submitted. It's for Australian residents and PR, permanent residents. And it's to get experience either in Australia or internationally, and then coming back to your place of employment. So, and it goes against the brain drain, where this one here, the international researcher coming to Australia would not fit into this program. Okay. The next question is from Martin. So program looks to include digital health. Almost all the Australian digital health companies are small. However, small companies are not eligible favoured. How is this going to be compatible with the aim to include digital health? So yes, it does include digital health. We're looking at connecting research institutes, hospitals, universities, tech transfer offices with people in the digital health space. There are some in Australia that are large. There are some overseas, and this will accelerate the growth of the Australian sector. So it may not, in terms of the small companies, we're not going to place people in small companies, but the researchers get the experience, come back if they're working in one of the eligible employers, and then they can commercialise products. So we can see that that's how it's going to benefit the digital health companies and to grow our digital health sector. Okay, Kelly, how can potential sponsors connect with fellows? So generally we're looking to foster relationships that are known. You may not have been, as a sponsor, may not have been working with a fellow, but you may be of tracking the fellow's work, seen some publications that they've done that you're interested in, and looking at maybe we can work here together. So we're looking to foster those relationships. As I said, MTPConnect, we don't have the capacity to be matchmakers in this, but in terms of a sponsor, if you do connect with our stakeholder engagement team, we may be able to provide some assistance, but it is limited. We're looking to accelerate relationships that are maybe pre-existing, or at least you've been tracking, and that's what we expect the sponsors to have a list of people that they're focused on. Good. Can funding be used to cover direct research costs? No. What we're looking for is funding the fellow salary and on costs, and also any relocation costs. Okay, who is assessing the applications? And that's from Anonymous. we have an independent panel, and it's a mixture of academia, industry, and health professionals, and they'll be assessing the applications. Okay, from Jason again, lots of questions there. That's great to see. Thanks, Jason. Are the fellowships designed for supporting new academia industry collaborations, or can individuals with existing industry connections apply? Both. So we're really looking to accelerate the existing industry connections, and if there's new ones, but as I said, if we expect that there's been some shared interest over a little while, we can nucleate those, but we really see the larger benefits from accelerating existing industry connections, and they can be fairly loose connections. Okay, Kyle Sheldrick. Kyle's asked, so our company has far greater FTE in external consultants, independent contractors than we do employees. Can we use external contractors as part of the supervision, mentoring provisions as sponsor? The answer to that is yes. Yeah, we realise that lots of companies outsource a lot of services, and because they outsource, that they may have a smaller headcount, but again, probably punching above their weight. And if the external contractors are part of that supervision mentoring provision, that will help with your application. Okay, from Ehud, is the sponsor expected to contribute funding? So the sponsor needs to provide space and for the fellow to operate in. If there's research, to contribute towards the research. What we're funding is the fellow salary to be based in the sponsor. Okay. From Mill, is CSIRO an eligible employer? Yes, CSIRO is an eligible employer. It fits into the government organisation. So yes, there, and we do happy to receive applications from CSIRO potential CSIRO fellows. Okay, from Amanda, there's a significant number of academics with reduced hours are out of work at the moment. Could you confirm that potential fellows that are currently unemployed are ineligible? A lot of the benefits of this program, Amanda, is that the fellows come back to the employer, and so we do prefer that they are employed prior to starting the fellowships. Some employers may take you on the provision that your first year is the fellowship, and that we're able to fund that. Okay. The next one for Warwick, what's the maximum number of fellows that one sponsor can get? And I've just realised I forgot to say this during the presentation, but we're expecting to fund between 24 to 40 fellows over the period of this fellowship, of the REDI Fellowship Program, so 24 to 40. We haven't put a maximum on the number of fellows that one sponsor can get. They may get multiple fellows. It is on a case-by-case, application-by-application basis. Okay, Anonymous. What happens if the sponsor and fellow wish to continue the relationship after 1 year, i.e. the fellow becomes the permanent employee of the sponsor? As I mentioned, we're not looking to fund business as usual. We're looking for the fellow to go to the sponsor, work there for a year, and come back and disseminate the information to the employee, the research institute, the department, the tech transfer office, the hospital, the clinic that they're currently working. And that's what our focus is that we do expect that the applications are to come back. In the assessment process, if we feel that, look, this is a trial and that the person's going to move permanently there, that will be a red flag, and that the assessment panel will not be funding those. Okay, the next question is from Liz. Do you need to be physically placed in the company? In terms of that, Liz, we expect you to be fully focused. So if we sponsor a full-time project, there we expect you to be fully immersed in the project. Because of COVID and working remotely, we understand that there may be some remote working, but we don't want you going into your employer every single day and doing your normal work and this on top. This is really to fund a separate project where you're embedded in the sponsor, whether it be physically or virtually. Obviously, physically, we'll have benefits in your application process because we do expect these to be very highly competitive. Okay, Emma, can you please expand on the ability to return to the employer? Would a continued relationship with the sponsor jeopardize this criteria? Okay. In terms of the second part of the question, continued relationship, there's lots of academia or industry collaborations, and that's what we're trying to drive. There can be benefits for you to be based in the sponsor going forward, but coming back to your previous place of employment, and with the ripple effect that I keep mentioning, we can see this having a greater impact on that, but the sponsors generally will be amenable, and the companies are used to working with people in public sector research, and so we don't see that being an issue. Can you apply again after completing a successfully awarded fellowship? No. In terms of the fellow, so this is in terms of the fellow can only get one supported project, but the project, in exceptional circumstances, we will fund up to 24 months. Clinicians mostly have adjunct with universities and private clinics. Can they still apply for fellowships? Yes. I strongly encourage the clinicians to apply for this, and generally they're in hospitals, and clinics are covered by the eligible employers, so we believe that that's covered off. If you think that you don't fit into that, please contact us directly with your circumstances, but it is intended to do that. Okay, would government be considered a sponsor? Okay, we're generally looking for companies. I can't think of a case where government would be considered a sponsor, but in saying that, I'm not going to 100% rule it out. So if the anonymous who asked that question could email the REDI Fellowships with details of what they see, we can check with our steering committee on this, but I can't think of any examples where it would be considered a sponsor. The eligibility slide indicated that research-intensive companies. So research-intensive, we mean supporting of research. So this can include venture capital companies. I can't remember whether I said it or not. I meant to. Regulatory affairs consultancies, medical affairs consultancies. So that's what we mean by research-intensive companies and having a human health focus. If they are focused on human health, very large, they have an R&D. That sounds that they've got the what we're looking for. So thanks for that question, Emma. Okay, just scroll up. Anonymous. So agreeing the appropriate scope, negotiating arrangements between employer and sponsor, and then making grant application is considerable investment in time and effort. Some sponsor size complexity requirements required so that organisations don't invest this effort if they will be screened out purely because they're too small. Okay, we've provided guidance on this, and we will have a Q&A forms coming out soon, and we'll provide some more guidance, but I think there is reasonable guidance on what is considered these, and we're looking at the intent and the support for the fellow. Okay, the one from Emma, expand on the ability to return to the employer. I think I've answered that one. Anonymous, if a multinational was collaborating with an Australian startup on a project, could the startup apply for the fellowship grant on the project so the fellow gets exposure to working on a startup and a multinational? For that, I had a similar question before. The fellow needs to be employed through one of the employer entities that we went through, so a hospital, a university, a Commonwealth a government entity. If the fellow is employed through that, then yes, they can apply. If they're just working solely for the startup, we're unable to fund that through this grant process. That's not the intention of this, even though we can see benefit in what you're suggesting. Okay, Warwick, when do you start announcing successful applications? We have the submission deadline, which is the 1st of March. That's our submission deadline. Those ones there we will start announcing publicly on the 30th of May, but before that time we will be in contact with the successful applicants and working through the development of the contract with them, but the formal announcement will be the 30th of March, if not before. Anonymous, is there any limit on the number of applications involving a particular employer, e.g. university? No, there's not. There's many different departments in a university or a research institute, so we're not capping that. The IP policy during the fellowship from Owen, that's something between the employer, the fellow, and the sponsor. You need to work through those here. We don't want the IP. The IP sits with whoever it is determined. Okay, Michael, so what does exceptional circumstances, 2 years part-time? No, part-time, with looking at the project to make a large no-go decision is going to take to getting to a certain point. This is going to take this much research, and in terms of part-time, it means that it's going to take 2 years. That's what we mean by exceptional circumstances. Warwick, so don't have any products in the market yet, but are 2 years away from commercialisation, then we aren't eligible. Warwick, it's about the support mechanisms that we've gone through, being a substantial company, that you have the different departments. That's the things that we're looking at. What I said before was a bit of an assumption, but it is we are looking for substantial companies that can provide the support that was given later on, earlier on. From Anonymous, can a private hospital be a sponsor? Yes, hospitals count. They're a specific employer that as a sponsor. Okay. Again, I can't see, I'm not sure when it would be a sponsor, because we are looking at getting products to market. We expect them to be an employer. But in saying that, if you could explain your reasoning and email the REDI Fellowships, we can then have a look at it, but it's unlikely for that one. Okay, Anonymous, how much does the industry sponsor contribute? The fellowship, in terms of the human resources paying for salary, is all completely paid for. The sponsor will need to invest in time, resources, and if it's a research project that requires benchtop research, then to contribute and provide that. If it's more corporate and commercial, they'll need to provide an area to work with the fellow. Okay, from Katrina, could one project that involves several large eligible organisations apply for more than one REDI fellow? For example, a hospital, the uni, the industry partner. Okay, sorry. Okay. The more than one project, we're generally looking for, we're funding an eligible sponsor, eligible fellow, supportive employer for a defined project with one fellow. So we wouldn't be expecting several large eligible organisations with more than one fellow. It would just be one of each. Okay. Okay, Kristen asked about what is returning to a casual university position. For that, we want the fellow to come back and disseminate their information, and in terms of being a casual, that's going to make it a very large risk for us, and so they would be unlikely to be funded.
Hi, Jared.
Yes.
If you just scroll up to Martin Sebas' question, yeah, there'll be 9 votes there.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Great. So Martin, the program looks to include digital health. Okay, I've already answered that question as well, that missed out. So yes, it includes digital health. There's small companies here in Australia, but we want the fellow to get industry best practice experience, then to bring it back to their research organisation. And so we still believe that that will grow the digital health sector. So just recapping on that. Okay, Kelly's I've answered before as well. Okay, Anonymous, can SMEs apply? Sorry. Is there a minimum revenue per year? Sponsor, how do you determine eligible SMEs? Okay, again, looking at the intent, we're looking to show the support for the sponsor. They're a substantial organisation. They can give them industry best practice examples, working cross-functional teams. That's what we're looking for. And the sponsor needs to demonstrate that they're able to do that. Okay. Anonymous attendee, can individual fellows apply for different projects with different sponsors? There's nothing stopping that, but I'm not sure how well they'll be assessed. So you're probably better off to work out which one has the best chance of funding and just stick with that. Okay, from Terence, if contracting is potentially through the employer, shouldn't it be possible for the employer to submit the application instead of the sponsor? Okay. So for that, Terence, there's lots of fellowship programs out there. This is unique, and this is driven by industry, so it's driven by the sponsor. This puts the sponsor's skin in the game, and it shows the sponsors committed to this project, which is why we want to see the sponsor submitting it. We understand the contracting entity may not be the sponsor. That's fine, but we want to really driven by the sponsor as something different to add to the fellowship landscape that's available in Australia. So for David, are planning to split the funded fellowships between ECRs, mid and late career applicants? If yes, what proportions? Early career, mid-career and late career applicants or experienced applicants are all eligible to apply. We haven't split it into proportions. We're looking at the impact of what each project has, and we'll fund the best projects, the best fellows, the best sponsors that are going to grow the MTP sector. So our focus is on growing the MTP sector. Should the top 5 outputs be a mix of patents and papers or just one of the two? Realise different people, different stages of their career have had different focuses previously. And so we're looking for a mix. We're not just going to say one or the other. Our assessment panel will be looking for, in totality, again, using the rope criteria that judge you against where you are in light of your career to this stage. Okay, Michael, we're a small startup with large overseas contracted partner. Would fellows be eligible to be embedded within our overseas partner whilst working on our project? If they're an eligible fellow, yes, Michael, you've got a substantive employer, substantive sponsor around that can provide the proper support, then yes, that will count. Okay, Terence, what is extensive research intensive for the sponsor? What about a health service provider that is actively engaged in research? It's impossible to comment here with questions such as this. This is definitely in, this is definitely out. Look, if they're actively engaged in research, if they're a health service provider, and that they probably fit. So if you want to add a little bit more colour and context around that, Terence, and send it to the fellowships question, we can then provide a specific answer on that one. Ehud, can a tech transfer office be an eligible sponsor? Yes. Short answer, we're looking at tech transfer offices in this. A lot of tech transfer offices are embedded in universities, but we know that some are their own entities and they fit into the eligible. Sorry, tech transfer office being eligible sponsor? Yes, it can. Sorry, I thought you said employer. My apologies. But yes, the tech transfer office, if it has what we're describing, could be an eligible sponsor. Trung, will these questions and answers be published online as FAQ and updated accordingly for ongoing reference? The webinar will be published very shortly, and so you can listen to the answers, but there will also be an FAQ coming out, and we're getting lots of questions to update, so that will be coming out probably early in the new year.
Hi, Jared, and we are having a lot of questions coming through, and we are actually over time at the moment, so we might just end any new questions there. Now, people, are you happy to stay on for a couple of more moments, Jared, to answer a couple of extra ones?
Of course, yes, yep.
Beautiful. So thanks, everyone. Again, that recording will be available for any questions that are outstanding, but we'll go through a few more. Thanks, Jared. Over to you.
Okay. For David, is a multi-site clinical trial considered an appropriate project? Again, in the defined project, we're looking to drive towards commercial outcomes. If we can see it driving towards commercial outcomes with growth for the Australian MTP sector, I would expect so. So, Anonymous, it's hard to find an R&D intensive large company in Australia. Most are overseas. Can you give examples of eligible companies? I'm not going to, look, I don't know of every single company in the MTP sector, so I'm not going to say, yes, these people are eligible, these ones are not. You need to have a look at the support, and that needs to be very clearly articulated during the application. If you have a specific company, look at the intent. Are they going to be able to grow the fellow with the best practice, and that they can then return and disseminate what industry, how they make those decisions, what their processes are back at academia, and then disseminate that information. Okay, Jeremy, really don't see the difference between ARC linkage in many respects. Okay, ARC linkages are fantastic fellowships. I can't comment on the exact differences between them. I'm not fully across the ARC linkages, but being sponsor-driven applications by the sponsor, as far as I know, this is the only one of its type being currently offered in Australia. Okay, Laura, how is the funding to be spent? Is there financial support for the employer to support reintegration of the fellow? No, we're only supporting during the term of the fellowship, so while the fellow is embedded in the sponsor. As they go back, we expect them to go back into the substantive positions, which should have already been covered off, but the employer benefits still with more highly commercial focused employees that can then disseminate and then act as a conduit to commercialisation. We see great benefits there. Okay, Anonymous, let's say you're doing contract research for a sponsor at an employer. Can the fellowship be used to support the salary of a fellow to continue work for the sponsor within the employer's grounds? Okay, doing contract research. So I'm assuming in this that you're employed by a university, an MRI, hospital, etc. So I'm making that assumption. You're doing contract research for the sponsor. We're looking to accelerate that project. So what you're describing is what we're looking to accelerate. There was a similar question before about using equipment. If there's only equipment at the employers, then yes, but we would still like to see you spending some time at the sponsor's location as well. A lot of the benefits on that are the soft skills that you get, the project management, looking at the way that industry critically evaluates the research towards go, no-go decisions, how much they're willing to invest in time and resources into it. So we do want you to spend some time in the sponsor as well, even if you are occasionally going back to the employer's grounds to use specialist equipment. Okay, from Simon, if during the course of the fellowship, the fellow becomes essential to the sponsor's business, can the fellow be exempt from return to the employer? Okay, we'll need to, Simon, we need to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. That's not the intention. The intention is really twofold. One, we're growing, or threefold. One, we're growing the sponsors, their business is able to expand and they're able to look at new research opportunities. The second is that the fellow grows themselves, develops new skills, a new lens, new way of looking at things, and then they return this and then they disseminate it in their institute, in their department, wherever they're working. And so we're looking for that. So we really do want them to come back and disseminate, because if they become and are employed in the sponsor during that time, then we're missing out on a major component that's going to increase commercialisation focus and increase the academia industry links that we need to grow to go up that OECD ranking for the translation of research. Anonymous, does the fellow need to go back to the current workplace following completion of the fellowship? That's our intention. So we want them to go back to the current workplace. Yes. David, does the value of in-kind contribution from the sponsor to the program to fund costs other than fellow salary make a difference? We want to see commitment from the sponsor, and that's what we want to see in the application. We haven't put a dollar value on it as such because the range of projects we're funding is so diverse, but we do want to see that commitment in there. Okay, Anonymous, can you share the presentation with us? I missed half it, unfortunately. Yes, it will go up in the next week at most as a webinar, so you can see the presentation there.
Yes, and we will pop the slides up on the website as well. Thank
Great.
you. It actually should be up by tomorrow.
Okay, thanks for that, Libby. Great. From Anonymous, can the fellow qualify even if the fellow employed part-time with the employer? Yes, we are funding part-time fellowships, and you may go up into full-time, but even if you come back and you're employed part-time, that's a little bit different than the casual. So you will be employed part-time going back, and you will have a chance to disseminate the information with your colleagues, so yes. From Christine, would the successful fellow be assured that their current rate of salary is not reduced during the duration of the fellowship? Great question, Christine. The fellowship committee that we have discussed that one. If you're academic and you have a step change in your salary during the year, we will, and you're still employed through the employer, we will be funding that. So yes, you won't be going backwards. We will fund your overall total remuneration package, including any incremental gains during the fellowship as well. So, okay, of the 32 million for this REDI program, how much is actually for these fellowships, salaries, etc., and how much for administration of the program, employees of MTPConnect? Okay, the 32 million covers the administration program and also the number of programs that we're running. So that's pillar 1, 2, and 3. We're funding between a minimum of 24 to 40 fellowships, and we're not releasing the price, how much is broken down into each component, but you can work out with 250,000 each that what the minimum is that we're funding for this program. And then of the 25 to 40 fellowships up to taking, is that across the whole program? It's across the whole program, and it's not each round. So it's across the 4 years. And I need to point out that the fellowships need to be completed by December 31, 2023. So that's why the closing date is in 2022, because we need time for the fellowships to occur. Okay, why is MTPConnect assumed that small companies develop fellow skills and capabilities or exercise? We have a limited budget and we're trying the best to administer it. And we feel that some small companies may fit into it. And so if you do believe it and you can put it in, you're welcome to apply. But they need to be substantial companies. We haven't said they're not small. We need to say substantial companies working with best practice. So if I had said small ones aren't eligible, and I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. But we're looking for best practice companies and have substantial that can support the growth of the fellow. Okay, from David, I think about the value of in-kind contribution. I think I've answered that, Libby. And from Anonymous about part-time, yes, we're funding part-time. If you're funded part-time with the employer, I've answered that one before, so yes, that's it. QUT Bridge Tech Industry Fellow Placement recipient eligible to apply for this REDI program. Yes, Owen, they can apply. It's two completely different programs. The Bridge Tech Industry Fellowships is short-term. This is long-term. If you think that this adds and that you're eligible for this, then you're welcome to apply. So from Christine, is there a standard funding agreement that sponsors and academia may review prior to submitting applications? Christine, we will be the shortlisted or the preferred applicants we will be giving the contract to. That's we're not advertising exactly what's in it. As mentioned, our focus is to make these happen, so there's no nasties in the contract that would stop it. We're viewing to try and make the best fellowships possible, and so there shouldn't be anything to worry about with the contracts, but we're not releasing them publicly. Are industry applications competitive? We expect this to be very highly competitive, this process. A lot of great opportunities there, and so we expect it to be competitive. Okay, are very large non-profit health providers eligible for employers? So we do have a list. So if they're a corporation, we'd need to check that. I think we've covered it, but Kristen, with yours, but I thought we had covered most of the health providers. So if you want to send an email to REDI, if we can double check on that, but I expect the answer is yes there. Claudine, we're not commenting specifically on companies, so we'd have to take that one offline. We've said the intent, what we expect the company to have, and so we'll leave it at that today. Okay, will there be any fund for potential international travel costs or costs associated with consumables? Okay, international, we are funding international relocation. That is covered, COVID permitting, of course. Consumables, we're not covering. In terms of the other thing that I mentioned that is funded, there may be some education programs. If the fellow would be best to do a short course or an education program while they're undertaking the fellowship, there is also an allocation of money possible for that as well, but we're not funding consumables. So from Anonymous, can there be research projects focusing on best practices in clinical trials and data protections which have a sector-wide benefits? It may have sector-wide benefits, but we still need a sponsor identified. The sponsor needs to be an eligible sponsor. We need the defined project that the sponsor is eligible for. You need the fellow and the employer. If they all fit, then yes, then that's okay. But it can't just be a sector-wide, not responsible to anyone. It's to place someone in a sponsor, so you need to have a sponsor on board for that. Private, not-for-profit organisations eligible as a sponsor. I've gone through the sponsors before. If they fit a research-intensive organisation, as we've described, have a R&D focus on either products or services as well, then yes, they may be eligible as a sponsor, and they're a substantive organisation. Okay, from Liz, what if there is an aim in research to improve human health outcomes to increase product popularity and therefore sales? Is that a commercial outcome of the program? Okay, sorry, Liz, I just need to reread this. Okay, there is an improvement of human health outcomes if you have a sponsor. If you're from an eligible sponsor, you're from an eligible employer, and then that will grow the sector. So that would, look, without much information, that appears to be in line with the intent of the program. So from Yogesh, are you going to split the fund in major areas of research, for example, medical, agriculture, basic science, veterinary science? Yogesh, we're only looking at health outcomes. So agriculture, basic science, vet science, we're not interested or we're not funding in. Where the MTP sector, so very much focused on human health and looking to fund it in those areas only. Okay, from Norbert, CSIRO, an eligible sponsor, not employer. I would see CSIRO as an eligible employer. I'm not sure in terms of sponsor, Norbert, but again, if you could provide some colour around it and email us directly, I can provide a more definitive answer on that. Okay, one last question. So if the applicant's director of the startup that owns IP that will be used in the project, but also employed by an MRI, so they're employed by an MRI, so they have an eligible employer and is also sponsored by industry, would this pose a problem with the application? It shouldn't. From Anonymous, in that case, that should be ineligible as long as you're working with an eligible sponsor for the period of the project. As mentioned before, we know that some employees of an eligible employee, also eligible fellows, may also have outside interests, but we do expect during this that you're based with that. So that's you should be fine. Okay.
And I think that is it for the questions.
Well,
okay. Well done on getting through those, Jared.
Thank you. So just thanks for joining us today in this really busy time between Christmas, coming up to Christmas. So thanks a lot for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Libby, Michelle and Rebecca for helping with the presentation today. The REDI team, looking forward to starting receiving applications. If you've got questions, please feel free to contact us. Also, as you leave today, please provide the feedback. It's really helps us to do a better job next time we do one of these, and it is quick. And so thank you to everyone and have a safe and great festive season. Thanks for that. Bye.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for everybody for joining us and for the last webinar of the year. So it's a great way to finish up. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. We will get that recording up onto our webinars page to view within 24 hours. So we're going to be busy this afternoon, and we will also put up a copy of the slides there too. So Jared, if you've actually got the contact details for the REDI team, which might be on the next slide, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll manage to phrase it somehow. I can't. So I've been trying to do that. Sorry.
No problem. Well, all the details are on our website on the REDI program page. So thanks to everybody. Thank you, Jared, and have a wonderful festive period. And yeah, keep those questions coming in via email. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.